The NBA season is finally back, kicking off last night with an Eastern Conference matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers, and a Western Conference showdown between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. While it is only one game and it's way too early to start making any definitive statements about these teams going forward, there might be some takeaways that we can monitor for these teams to see if they become trends. Now, starting off with takeaway number one, Jayson Tatum looks like Jayson Tatum again. After an uncharacteristic poor shooting performance from inside the arc during the NBA Finals last year, Tatum looks back to normal and in a lot of ways better than he did last year. His finishing looked really solid, and it's clear that he's not dealing with that injury that seemed to hinder him during their playoff run last season. I also loved how he worked off the ball, and I thought that Malcolm Brogdon was a fantastic connector between Brown and Tatum. Not only was Tatum's offensive output about as good as you could possibly have hoped, but his defense was great as well. He was sniffing out steals and disrupting passing lanes, showcasing some of that great defensive instinct that he has. And it's unrealistic to expect performances like these to be a nightly occurrence for him, but I do think that these kind of games are going to be more and more common. People have been debating for a while now whether or not Tatum is a superstar or a top 10 player, but if he's playing like this throughout the season, he's going to find himself in MVP conversations really fast. The second takeaway for the Boston Celtics is just how awesome Malcolm Brogdon is going to be for them. Last night, he did exactly what you'd want Malcolm Brogdon to do. He put up 16 points off the bench on some pretty efficient shooting, and his facilitating was perfect in the context of the Celtics offense. Brogdon's going to offer some really nice secondary shot creation off the bench and serve as another spark plug for their offense. I love how on this play, he gets it in the corner against James Harden, attacking the closeout and recognizing that Grant Williams is sealing off his man, so Brogdon goes straight to the basket for the finish. He's a really smart off-ball player as well, making a simple cut to the basket here on the inbound to get a completely uncontested layup. The nice thing about Brogdon is that he's a bit of a plug-and-play guy, so if they need him to start on some nights and come off the bench on others, it's not going to be any sort of disruption. I really loved how he focused on getting into the paint to force the defense's hand, which resulted in a ton of perimeter opportunities. We can see how he creates the chances here with how he drives baseline, forcing help from Embiid, with PJ Tucker being sealed off by Noah Vonleh. And then Brogdon makes a beautiful pass from nearly out of bounds to Tatum, and Tucker's going to make a difficult recovery, biting on the pump fake and allowing Tatum to get into an easy pull-up. I really love this fit, and I think he's going to be a key piece in maintaining their continuity of success from last season. They don't need him to be a 20-point per game scorer, they just need him to be an offensive spark off the bench and a reliable defender. I'm not really sure why people thought that the Ime Udoka suspension would result in the Celtics completely forgetting what works for them. They seem to pick up right where they left off, and assuming continued improvements from both Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, they're still going to be among the best teams in the NBA. And even more, they got this win without Robert Williams, so once he's back and if he can stay healthy, their defense is going to be even better than it already looks like it is. On the 76ers side of things, one of the big takeaways is of course the fact that we got a vintage James Harden game. He finished the game with 35 points on 64% shooting from the field and 56% shooting from three, along with 8 rebounds and 7 assists. This is obviously just one game, but he looked healthy, which is the key difference between this year and last year. Finally having an offseason to fully heal and get back in shape looks like it could be exactly what he needed to get back to that all-NBA level of production that we know he's capable of. If this is any indicator of what to expect from him this season, the 76ers are going to be a really tough team to beat with just him and Joel Embiid. But then you take into account Tyrese Maxey's potential leap, and they get even scarier. He was a bit quiet in the first half of this game, but in the second half, he scored 12 points with 9 of those coming in the fourth quarter. Now, the important thing is that I noticed a pretty big shift in his aggressiveness because in the fourth quarter, you could tell that he really started hunting down his shots to try and get the Sixers back in the game, and he showcased some really solid shot making. I'm fully confident that Tyrese Maxey is going to elevate his game to an all-star level of play, and if he does, they're going to have one of the deadliest offensive trios in the NBA. One thing to monitor for the 76ers is going to be their defense this year because last night it was really interesting to me that Matisse Thybulle only played 24 seconds. Matisse Thybulle is obviously one of their best defenders, and even though he isn't one of the best offensive players in the world, there's no denying that he is a really solid defender. Their defense looked a little bit disjointed last night, so I want to see how Doc Rivers aims to mitigate that in the future and establishes a solid defensive scheme going forward. Now let's pivot over to the Western Conference matchup between the Warriors and the Lakers. The Warriors looked like they didn't miss a beat at all from last year. Their offense still looks fantastic, their defense still looks great, but Andrew Wiggins really stood out to me. He showed in the playoffs that he's able to step things up a notch and be more of a second/third option by flipping the switch to be more aggressive as a shot creator, but that was really clear last night. I know he got a lot of criticism for being selected as an all-star last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he plays an even bigger role this year and has one of the best seasons of his career. Jordan Poole was a little bit quiet in this one, and he didn't really have the most efficient shooting night in the world, but it's not a huge concern to me right now. I think that the things that he did show, like his shot creation and his quick first step and how deadly his burst can be, there's still plenty there that I think he's going to be just fine, and this game is not an indicator of what to expect from him going forward. James Wiseman was another standout. He scored 8 points and grabbed 7 rebounds and a block in his 16 minutes of play. Most importantly, he looked springy, and that athleticism that Warriors fans were hoping to see was definitely there. I think he's going to play an even bigger role this year if he can continue to be a positive player off the bench and continue to develop. Now, moving over to the Lakers, even though they lost, there were actually some positives about what we saw. Anthony Davis played some fantastic defense, and while he deterred a ton of shots at the rim, it was his on-ball defense that impressed me the most. He was getting steals and locking up ball handlers really well. His efficiency on the offensive end wasn't particularly jaw-dropping, but he was moving quick with and without the ball, and he seemed comfortable when he had to bang down low and post up against tough physical defense. He had a couple of scary falls here and there, but he seemed to get right back up and not be slowed down. Obviously, the Lakers are going to be at their best when he's healthy and playing like a superstar, so if the defense can consistently look like it did, and he can get back to that ridiculous level of offense that we saw from him in years prior, he's going to improve the outlook for this team significantly. I want to talk about the Lakers offense as a whole because there was actually some stuff that I liked and then there was some stuff that I didn't like. There were times where the offense would go stagnant and it felt like each player was kind of just taking turns isoing or taking pull-up jumpers and everyone else was just kind of standing there. I understand the 5-out mentality when you're playing around LeBron because he's going to be able to generate open looks for you on the perimeter basically at any time, but I would have liked to see some more emphasis on movement and running some offensive sets to try and change things up a little bit. Possessions like this one were really frustrating to see. They're setting weak screens and everybody's just standing around on the perimeter looking at each other before Patrick Beverley just jacks up a tough contested 3. They were playing so much better when they were moving off ball and setting good hard screens. They did it on occasion and it seemed to work really well. They ran this high pick and roll a couple of times, and when the defense was hedging up top, it either resulted in somebody being open on the perimeter or an open shot in the mid-range. They had a couple of sets that they ran that showed the potential for a functioning offense. It's just going to be a matter of them figuring out what works and what doesn't. There's more promise for them establishing a reliable system than the box score and the loss would suggest. I really just think they need to buy in and establish some level of consistency. Russell Westbrook has fielded a ton of criticism over the last year, but it's hard to blame last night's loss on him. He scored relatively efficiently and his rebounding was great for getting them out in transition, which was an area where the Lakers experienced a ton of success last night. And overall, Westbrook just seemed to flow better within the offense. While he did have the occasional brick, there weren't a ton of ill-advised shots that just made you shake your head and question things. Now, it is just one game, so the biggest factor is going to be doing this on a nightly basis and building upon what worked and moving on from what didn't. So what was your biggest takeaway from opening night? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. That's the #1 way to support me and help me continue making content. Also, I just launched my second channel where I'm going to be doing post-game reactions and some more unscripted stuff, so go check that out and subscribe so that you don't miss anything. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.